I kissed him every night before bed. I folded his shirts. I waited for him to come home, never knowing he came back with blood under his nails. For 7 years, I called him my husband. The world would come to know him as the Vampire of Düsseldorf. This isn't just a story about murder. It's about love, denial, and the terrifying silence between two people. I never imagined my name would be printed next to his. Not on the front page of the newspapers. Not in the same breath as Germany's most deranged serial killer. Not as the woman who slept beside the Vampire of Düsseldorf. My name is August Curtin, and for 7 years I was married to a man the world now calls a monster. But I didn't see it. Not when he brought me flowers. Not when he made coffee in the morning. Not even when the blood started to show up. Peter Curtin was my husband, my calm, my chance at a second life. And I was the woman who believed in redemption, until it swallowed me whole. I met Peter Curtin in 1921, just after I moved to Altenburg, hoping to bury my past. I'd served 5 years in prison for shooting a man who promised me love, then threw me away. I did my time, paid my debt. And when I met Peter, I wanted nothing more than to be invisible, to start over. Peter was quiet, polite, a man who listened more than he spoke. He never asked about the gun in my past, and I didn't ask about the shadows in his eyes. We weren't in love. Not really, but we were steady. He brought home his paycheck, kissed me goodnight, even helped wash the dishes. To our neighbors, we were the ideal German couple. No kids, no drama. Just two people floating through life on a quiet routine. But in true crime stories, quiet is never just quiet. It's a warning. By 1929, the city of Düsseldorf was holding its breath. A serial killer was out there, preying on the streets. They called him the Vampire of Düsseldorf, a name that sent shivers through every newspaper headline. At first, I paid no attention. Murders happened in the news, not in my kitchen. But then Peter started coming home late. His shirts had stains. Wine, he claimed, or ink. But the smell was coppery, metallic. It didn't wash out. He stopped touching me like he used to. And when he did, it felt like he was pretending I was someone else, a younger woman, a stranger. I'd lie in the dark next to a man I once trusted and wonder, is this what a marriage becomes? A silent horror film no one talks about? I convinced myself, no. Peter fixes the door hinges. He smiles at children. Monsters don't sweep the kitchen floor after dinner. But then came the headline. Killer drinks victim's blood. And something inside me cracked. Still, I said nothing. Because how do you ask your husband if he's the one the whole city fears? How do you say, did you stab that little girl? In every crime documentary, there's that one person who could have stopped it, but didn't. Maybe that was me. Or maybe I knew all along and I chose to stay quiet. It's strange what you start to notice once you stop pretending everything's fine. Little things. A shirt tossed in the wash before I could see it. A drawer suddenly locked. The way Peter stared out the window. Not lost in thought, but waiting. And the nights. He'd come home late, eyes sharper than usual. His jaw tight, his touch cold. I thought he was having an affair. God, I wish that had been the truth. By 9:29, Düsseldorf was gripped with fear. A serial killer was on the loose, attacking women and children at random. They called him the Vampire of Düsseldorf. He didn't have a type. He used hammers, scissors, knives. Sometimes he drank their blood. The newspapers called him a monster, and I was married to him. I just didn't know it yet. Peter once told me he only felt alive at night. Back then, I thought it was poetic. He liked quiet walks, smoked rarely, and never drank. Now I wonder if night was just when he felt safe enough to be himself. One evening, I noticed a small cut on his hand. He said it was from a broken window, but when I asked where, his answers grew vague, then cold. "Why do you care?" he snapped. I didn't know how to answer, because I did care, but I was starting to fear the truth. He stopped kissing me, stopped sleeping. Sometimes I'd wake up to find him just standing there watching me. He said he was thinking, but he never said what about. In every true crime documentary, they talk about patterns, rituals, obsessions. What they don't talk about is what it's like to live inside that pattern, to make breakfast for someone unraveling in front of you, to feel evil like smoke seeping into your walls. Peter became obsessed with the murders. He'd clip newspaper articles, highlight details. I thought he was just scared, like the rest of us. Now I know he was admiring his own work. Then one day he forgot to lock the pantry. Inside I found ropes, stained rags, a pair of scissors I'd never seen. It wasn't proof, not yet, but my skin crawled. A few nights later, I caught him staring at the photo of a murdered little girl, 5 years old. He folded the paper, said nothing, and slept like a baby. That was the moment I began to wonder. Was I still in love with him, or just afraid of what he might do if I left? And maybe more terrifying, what if I was already a part of his story? Not as a wife, but as a shield, the perfect disguise for a man who knew exactly how to wear a smile. It was raining that night. Not a storm, just a soft, steady drizzle that made the windows hum. Peter came home soaked, saloned, and distant. He sat at the table, stared at his tea, and said the words that changed everything. "I hurt someone." At first, I thought he meant a fight, a mistake, maybe an affair gone wrong. But then he said her name, Maria Budlik, a young woman new to Düsseldorf. She needed help, but he offered it. Then he led her into the woods and tried to strangle her. She screamed, he said. I let her go, but it's too late. They'll come for me. I froze. My husband, Peter Curtin, had just confessed to attempted murder. His voice was calm, too calm, like he was reading a grocery list. Then came the second blow. It wasn't just her, he said. I'm the one they're looking for. I'm the Vampire of Düsseldorf. That name had haunted the city for months. A serial killer who stabbed children, drank blood, and vanished into the night. And now he was sitting in my kitchen, wet boots on the floor, confessing to it all. I asked why. He didn't cry, didn't beg. He just said, because it made me feel alive, and that he couldn't stop. He didn't use the word pleasure. He didn't need to. I'd seen it in his eyes before. The stillness, the satisfaction. I just never understood what it meant. Then he said something even stranger. He asked me to turn him in, not out of guilt, but for the reward money. "Let me give you something," he said. "A new life." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the man I thought had saved me. Now I knew the truth. I'd married a German serial killer. Not a broken man, a hidden one. The next morning, I went to the police. They didn't believe me until Peter walked in behind me and confirmed every word. He confessed to 9 murders, over 30 attempted killings. He described the blood, the fire, the ecstasy. He smiled. He never apologized. And me? I walked out of that station shattered, because in every true crime documentary, they talk about monsters, but they don't tell you what it's like to love one, to pour him tea just hours after he murdered a child. That's what I can't forgive myself for. Not that he killed, but that I loved him while he did. I wasn't the one on trial, but the moment I walked into that courtroom, it felt like I was. The eyes, the whispers. 7 years, sleeping beside the Vampire of Düsseldorf. They looked at me like I was lying, or worse, his accomplice. Peter Curtin, Germany's most sadistic serial killer, stood before the judge like he was giving a lecture. No remorse, no tears. He recited the murders like dates in a ledger. "I stabbed Rosa Oliger 13 times," he said. "I drank from Maria Hahn's throat until I vomited. Not from guilt, just too much blood." The courtroom fell silent. Even the stenographer froze. I sat in the back, hands clenched, watching the man I married disappear before me. But the voice, I recognized it, that cold, flat tone, the same voice he used when I once asked why he never smiled. Because smiling is for people who feel things, he said. Now I understood. They asked me to testify not about the murders, about the man. I told them about the stains, the locked drawers, the way love turned mechanical, the way silence crept in. I said I didn't know who he really was. But even as I spoke, I felt the jury studying me, not him. The press called him the Vampire, but they gave me a name too, the Widow of Blood. To the public, I wasn't the woman who turned in a monster. I was the woman who let him kiss her goodnight. Peter didn't defend me. All he said was, "She made me feel normal." Like I was a disguise, a tool he used to look human. The defense tried to claim insanity, but the psychiatrists didn't agree. One called him not insane, just evil. Dr. Carl Berg said he was driven 90% by sadism, 10% by revenge. And I believed every word. On April 22, 1931, the jury needed only 2 hours. Guilty, 9 murders, 7 attempted, sentenced to death by guillotine. When asked for his final words, he didn't speak to the court. He looked at me. "I told you I'd take care of you, August," he said. "Now I have." Then he smiled. That smile shattered me, because for a moment, I saw the man I married again. And I hated myself for missing him. True crime stories promise closure. But all this trial gave me was silence, the kind that lingers in your bed and whispers at night. You lived with a monster, and you loved him. No one pointed a finger at me in court. No one said I was guilty. But after the verdict, the world decided for itself. I wasn't just his wife, I was his cover. Peter Curtin was executed by guillotine on July 2nd, 1931. They say his last question was to the prison doctor. After my head is cut off, will I still hear my blood gush from the stump? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures. Even at the end, he was obsessed with blood. That's the man I loved. The Vampire of Düsseldorf, Germany's most deranged serial killer. And I became a footnote. The papers called me the widow of the vampire. To the neighbors, I was the woman who should have known. So I disappeared, left Düsseldorf, changed my name, started over in a place where no one read the news. But silence followed because I still asked myself the question no one else had to. Was I guilty too? Not of the murders, but of folding his shirts, laughing at his jokes, letting the man who killed children kiss me goodnight. Some days I told myself I couldn't have known. Peter was smart, careful. He knew how to wear a smile, shake hands, play the role. But then I'd remember the way he flinched at a child's laughter, the way he watched fires burn. And deep down, I knew. Not what, not how bad, but something. And I did nothing. In every true crime documentary, we focus on the killer. But what about the ones they leave behind? What happens to the wife who wakes up beside evil wearing a wedding ring? There's no trial for someone like me. No handcuffs, no cell. Just guilt. Heavy, lingering. I've thought about writing it all down, but I know the truth. People don't want to hear from women like me. They want monsters in cages, not wives who missed the signs. Because admitting I didn't know means admitting you might not know either. So I live quietly now. Curtains drawn, news off. And some nights I still wake at 2 a.m., expecting to hear his key in the door. Do I still love him? No, but I remember the parts that weren't evil, and I hate myself for that. Because Peter Curtin doesn't deserve to be remembered for anything but what he truly was. A predator, a sadist, a monster in human skin. But he wasn't just a monster. He was my husband. And that's the part of the crime story no one wants to hear. So I ask you, if you live with a monster but never see his teeth, does that make you innocent? Or just blind, you decide, because the court never tried me? But every day since, I've lived like I was sentenced.
During the trial, he expressed remorse for being unfaithful to his wife, but not about the actual homicides. So he knew that he had done something wrong. He knew that she would be upset for some reason, but he chose one reason that was much less serious than another. He was asked by the judge about his conscience. He replied, "I have none. Never have I felt any misgiving in my soul. Never did I think to myself that what I did was bad, even though human society condemns it." So 2 things here. There was no guilt or shame, and typically those feelings would reduce the likelihood of somebody committing a crime. So they're like safeties that were removed in the case of Curtin. And his use of the word human is curious. Perhaps he really didn't think of himself as a human.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.